Welcome to the Azure Back to School month. My name is Shabaz Darr. I'm a senior infrastructure specialist at Netcompany. I am joined today by a good friend of mine. Hi, Sam.
Hi guys, Sam O'Donnell. I'm infrastructure master at Netcompany. I specialise in Microsoft Teams and all that, and Shabaz has dragged me into presenting this session on that. So I suppose a little bit about ourselves there. So myself, I've got over 15 years experience in IT, mostly messaging and collaboration. So naturally, Microsoft Teams kind of falls into that remit. Please follow me on Twitter and have a look at my rather underdeveloped blog, but it will get better. I'm sure Shabaz won't give me much of a choice.
Yeah, and as I said, just to introduce myself as well again. So I'm a senior infrastructure specialist in Netcompany. Around 15 years experience in IT, 8 of those within Microsoft Cloud. For those of you who are on Twitter, obviously you can follow me at Shabaz Darr. I have a blog as well, which I update every now and then, which is imitgeek.com. I also have a YouTube channel, again, youtube.com/imitgeek. I do different content on there, mainly around Azure, Microsoft 365, my last series being Azure Virtual Desktop. But today we're here to talk about Microsoft Teams devices, aren't we, Sam?
We are, and we're going to talk about how a very sort of light introduction into how they integrate with Azure AD and what you can do with those computer objects, especially around Endpoint Manager when we start applying policies. It will focus more on a Surface Hub, only because I've kind of got that to play with, but the same principle applies, policies that you apply to devices using Endpoint Manager.
Excellent.
So I'm going to crack on and carry on. And one of the first things we kind of need to understand is the last 18 months have been hard for everybody. It's been a difficult, challenging time for organizations, businesses, and people throughout the globe. And the modern ways of working is changing. You know, we all used to go into an office, might work from home one day a week, and have that hybrid connectivity. And in order to kind of make that modern workplace a better place, there's a couple of things that we need to consider, and that's teamwork anywhere. We've got to be able to work anywhere in this new world. We've got to have fluid team collaboration. And what those two can lead to is a really good, strong team that's been brought together using technology and using collaboration. Couple of stats over the last sort of these are 2020 statistics. I haven't got them for 2021, but when they were taken, 82% of company leaders plan to allow employees to work from home some of the time. So some of the time is better than none. Given that the current climate, a lot of people have downsized their offices, took the opportunity, their companies took the opportunities to get rid of office space, to save cost. 74% of employees say that it's people, it's human interaction they miss about being in the office. Now, obviously, we have a policy within Netcompany, and that is, when you have a Teams meeting, your cameras are on, and that's so that you can see people face to face and have that interaction as well. And 55% of people say working collaboratively is far more difficult at home. And I agree. We all miss that time when we could just lean over the desk and go, "Oh, Shabaz, fancy a brew at the, at the coffee desk." It's gone. That's gone. You can't do that at home. And even just working collaboratively and just leaning over, going, "Oh, have you got the notes from the other meeting, or have you got such a thing?" That's gone. Looking for the little Teams indicator to go green before you try and reach somebody is, it's difficult, because people are busy all the time when they're constantly at home and being badgered. So the challenge we have is how do we improve a hybrid collaboration? Now, Microsoft Teams is a really good platform for collaboration. Not only can you do voice and video, you can do PSTN calls. So, desk phones are gone. The amount of organizations that have got rid of their desk phones over the last 18 months because they've invested in putting their technology through into Teams. So it's very important that we have that foundation, that fundamental layer as a platform as a service or infrastructure as a service, to a new thing UC as a service, unified comms as a service, and device as a service. These are all things that have heavily improved over the last 12 to 18 months. So what are Teams devices? Helps if I press the button, doesn't it? There we go. What are Teams devices? So Teams devices are, it's not a new thing. They've been out for a while, and there are many different variants, shapes, and forms at the moment. And you will see that there are different OSs that are involved. Some are Android, some are Windows-based, some are Windows IoT, some are Windows 10 Enterprise. But there's also in the Surface Hub, they've got their own special edition of the OS that does different things, which means you can only secure it differently. Room panels are relatively new, I'd say, in the last 12 months. These are Teams integrated room panels, which all integrate into the Teams ecosystem, so you can have that outside the meeting room as well. User devices, desk phones, headsets. Desk phones are still out there. You can still buy Android-based desk phones, and they do have a Teams app installed on them. And you can use them for a variety of things. We still have people who like receptionists, for example, or common area phones and devices, even emergency phones. They can still be used in such fashion. Microsoft Teams rooms on Android, formerly collaboration bars. So you'll see in a couple of demonstrations later on in the Teams Admin Center, it still says collaboration bars. That is going to change eventually, I hope, because they are no longer called collaboration bars. That's one thing that Microsoft changed very, very quickly afterwards. Microsoft Teams rooms on Windows. It is essentially a Windows 10 PC running IoT or Enterprise, however you want to deploy them, with a special Teams app that sits on top. There are some requirements. You've got to be careful. Make sure you don't over secure them by ensuring lockout policies and all that kind of things. So it doesn't lock or log out after a certain period of time, because these are designed, once they start up, they're designed to log straight into the local account, start the device, start the app, and it's the app that signs in to Microsoft Teams. So Microsoft Teams rooms, they are designed in many shapes and forms, as I've already said, to make collaboration easier. And I know we're trying to establish that hybrid way of working, and you are going to have to focus at some point on the meeting room. Now, meeting room is where, let's say, 60%, 70% of the people in the meeting could be, and the other 40 or 30% will be working remotely, working from home. And it's how you interact with those different types of people is what's important. So they don't feel isolated, and you make it nice and diverse and collaborative. So Teams rooms themselves, they're easy to use. They do have a very much look and feel of the Microsoft Teams client. The buttons are pretty much the same. There's been a lot of work done on the Microsoft Teams rooms and Android device over the last 12 months to make it all look the same. So the ecosystem all looks the same around Microsoft Teams. And transform your spaces. Gone are the times where you could fit 15, 20 people in a boardroom. In the current environment, I think our boardroom is down to 4 people, down from 12. That's because of the space and size of the room. Hopefully things start going back to normal, that changes. But transform the spaces you've got to make them more collaborative. If you can put a touchscreen in there, put a touchscreen. Again, COVID safe. Do you want people touching the screen? But again, that's down to your individual company policies. With the rules and regulations changing and constantly evolving, more and more things, more and more people will start getting comfortable with that kind of stuff. So it's important to look at the spaces you've got and how you want to transform and manage those. They're simple to deploy and scale, and they are easy to manage using simple policies, some of which we can talk through here. So just a summary of some of the devices that are available, some of the configurations. Many different types of configurations. Meet and present, meet and co-create. Now, obviously, granted, Surface Hub, very expensive, Gucci toy. They are really good. We use one in the office quite a lot. I do like to doodle and do my whiteboards on it. There is a picture circulating LinkedIn of my son using it when it was at home in my living room, colouring Chase from Paw Patrol. So, they are easy and simple to use. If my 4-year-old son can do it, anyone can. And the types of device that you put in these spaces will depend on the size of the space. You've got anything from 3 to 4 people or one person. If it's a CEO or C-level person, you might want to put a Surface Hub in there with the Windows 10 Enterprise OS rather than the Windows 10 Teams OS. In your collaboration spaces, Surface Hub can come on a wall or it can be on a trolley with a battery, so it's completely mobile. And again, it's touchscreen. Collaborative working gets people in the office working collaboratively. But the whiteboard app that comes on the Surface Hub is also available on your laptop or your PC. You can install that from the Windows Store, if your organization allows that is. And you can use, if you've got a touch-enabled device, you can use a pen or a finger to really work with people and co-create with people. They could be stood around the Surface Hub in the office, and you could be drawing on the same whiteboard, the same virtual whiteboard on your laptop and device. And again, that's really interested some people, especially in design areas. I mean, like I say, I use mine all the time. I love whiteboarding. I've got ridiculous whiteboards in there of huge architecture drawings, which, I picture 1,000 words, so I like to draw it. So I like to co-create, and it's good because people in the office like it as well, because they can come and go, well, what about this? Or what about that? And you really work. And the same with remote people, they can go, well, have you seen this? Or what about this? It works, getting people in and interactively working with those people as well. So there is different types of devices for different areas, depending on the size and scale of their areas. And some devices will be Windows based, some will be Android based, but that will depend on the size of space and your requirements for those rooms. You might even decide, you know what, this room doesn't need to be Teams enabled. It's just going to have a plug and play camera, and anyone can walk in with a laptop and plug in, and away they go. So, it doesn't have to be Teams enabled. So with these devices, because they are Teams enabled and they log into Microsoft Teams effectively, they've got to have a license. So licensing Microsoft Teams rooms, there are currently two flavors of license. You've got Microsoft Teams Room Standard and Microsoft Teams Room Premium. So the Premium, there's a long list, and that's only some of them on there. And they have dedicated SKUs for licensing for this, and it's per device or per room. So you can get away with using one license for multiple devices in the room. For example, the room panels, they would log into the same license, the same app. Okay. So there's the account. So you'd have a login account, your license account. It's a room mailbox, so you don't need an Exchange license. So out the box, the Microsoft Teams Room Standard, you get a Teams license, a phone system license, an audio conferencing license, and an Endpoint Manager license. And you don't need an Exchange because room licenses are classed as resources. So as long as the person connecting to those is a licensed Exchange user, you should be covered. In the Teams Room Premium, there's a whole raft of features that are included in that, and that could be service desk integration, monitoring, 24/7 support from Microsoft, on those particular devices. It is pricey, but that would depend on how often your rooms. That's a cost that you would have to weigh up based on usage versus requirement.
I suppose, Sam, it's like most Microsoft licensing discussions. You need to look at what is relevant to your business.
Yeah.
And which out of the available features, what are you going to really use? I mean, the standard one seems to include some of the main ones like Intune, Endpoint, the conferencing, etc. That might be applicable to most companies. How many businesses are going to use maybe the insights and suggestions? And so I'm not saying it's not a good feature, but it's about just that the business and organization having that internal discussion, what we're really going to use.
I mean, the insights and suggestions go into some stuff like how often the room's used, and it could give you some suggestions. When is the best meeting time for this room, or how often is this room booked at this time, sort of thing. And also, you do have to. Some people are loath to pay the license fee. Everyone pays a license fee, don't they? But when you start going into some really in-depth Teams room designs, yes, you could use one license for the panel and the meeting room device. But if you want coordinated meetings with a Surface Hub, for example, that means your Surface Hub has to be licensed with a Teams Room account, because it's the two accounts that trust each other in order for that to work. So there is an additional cost depending on what devices you go in. There is a thought process that you've got to go through, and that comes down to sitting down and really thinking about the spaces that you have in the office to go there for that.
So, Sam, we've obviously discussed a lot around Teams devices and collaboration at the moment. The next bit I wanted to discuss was Azure AD, because as with most Microsoft 365 services and Azure services, the underlying sort of identity management is all Azure Active Directory. So the three pieces that I want to really discuss within this section is the Microsoft 365 admin roles that you can use, some bits on dynamic group membership, and also Azure AD passwordless auth, which is a great. Well, we've both used this, and we've doing Teams devices.
Yeah, it's great, especially when you've got the Surface Hub. There's nothing worse than sitting there on a big 84-inch or 50-inch Surface Hub with the keyboard on screen and everyone's watching you type in your password. Bit of a security no. But using the passwordless authentication, using the Microsoft Authenticator app on your device, it has been quite a good little unique sort of selling point, if you will, for adopting these and people using the Surface Hubs properly for what they should be using them for.
So we've got a little demo to share shortly as well after this piece, so that'll be interesting to see. So moving on to the Microsoft 365 admin roles. The three roles that we're gonna just touch on. The first one's global administrator. Now this is obviously AKA God account. You have access to everything. Now there is obviously a lot more Intune accounts as well that you can use for managing Teams devices. But the two that I wanted to talk about a bit more were the Teams relevant ones. So Sam, can you tell us a bit more about these two Teams ones?
Yeah, so the Teams administrator role is the sort of the Teams service admin. It's kind of the guy that owns all the teams really, and they can access user policies, call data, quality analytics. Basically run the Teams service, have access to everything in there and the configuration around that. The Teams device administrator, it doesn't provide access to most of that. All it pretty much does is to allow you to assign policies and configuration from within the Teams admin center. You can view connected peripherals, you can do basic troubleshooting, you can restart the device, you can do updates to the device. So there is sort of if you had someone who didn't particularly want to have full sort of God level access to Teams, but their responsibility are this meeting room, that meeting room, or all the meeting room devices within your organization, you would just give them the Teams device administrator role.
Perfect. Well, good. So dynamic group membership. So this is one that I want to touch on because it just shows the sort of management within Azure AD you can do, and it using dynamic groups as opposed to a normal security group is a lot less management overhead. So with a dynamic membership, it enables the membership of teams to be defined by one or more rules essentially, and it lowers that admin overhead because it's all automated.
Yeah, so not quite what you said there, but close enough. So when you automatically enroll a device, that's one of the things you've got to have in place. Automatic device enrollment does help it, absolutely. And when the device is enrolled and it's got a computer name, for example, if you had a Surface Hub, and just using the example sh dash or mtr dash for Microsoft Teams rooms as your sort of like naming convention prefixes, you could assign a group or create a dynamic group within Azure AD and set them rules to say, right, if this computer object or this device has mtr dash star, add to this group. Once it adds to that group, and that group may or may not be automatically assigned to an endpoint manager policy, so then straight away you haven't got to rely on somebody moving that device to a group. It's already in the group, and it's already now applying sort of those policies to that. And I will show you in the Teams admin center, sorry, wrong, in the endpoint manager center, admin center, where fact, is if I can get my bearings, so configuration profiles, and I'm going to pick on so we've talked about the group for London Surface Hubs. So I'm just going to click on that.
Yeah.
I have 2 devices. So there's 2 devices currently in that group. There we go. So SH-London and Surface Hub-LON, which meet the 2 criteria for those groups. Okay, so they are in that group, and then it's picking up the policies which I have set. Sneaky little search on Google for some free 4K wallpapers, to apply to the Surface Hub background, and you'll see that that lovely 4K London Bridge wallpaper in the demo for the passwordless authentication. Okay, but as you can see here, the included group is AAD, so Azure AD. This is my own personal naming convention that I've used for test labs. Mobile device management, Surface Hubs, London devices. So it's purely just devices accounts, and that's going to assign that. And this is just sort of like one of the base configuration policies for the Surface Hub that I have. There is another policy, but we'll cover that going on. So
what we've quickly just shown there, though, Sam, is the integration. Okay, we've shown 2 different services within Microsoft 365 there. We've shown Azure AD, Dynamic Groups, and we've shown an Endpoint Manager policy. So already you can see how integrated Teams is with the whole ecosystem, which I think is amazing.
And for both those Surface Hub devices, the way that I've got the account set up is that those devices can auto enroll into Intune. And one, I've gone through the out-of-box experience for setting up the Surface Hub, and I've given it a device name. I've told it to join Azure AD. It's done that. It's sat there. Yes, it might take a little bit longer for replication. It's Azure at the end of the day. Policies don't apply straight away. It took a while, but the devices are in the group, and give it a short time later, half an hour or so, that device then had the policies, and we all love a good wallpaper, and it's one of the easiest ways to tell as well if your policies applied, isn't it? So it's a really good sort of interaction with that, and with some of the changes coming to Surface Hub, hopefully this year, deploying that will be a hell of a lot simpler and sweeter, and this integration really does sort of help that process.
Excellent, perfect. So moving on from dynamic group membership, I want to get into some of this is my favorite part, the passwordless authentication. Yes. So what we have is essentially with the password authentication, I've got a couple of things, just going to dwell on some points, and I want to show a bit of a diagram. Essentially what it is it's something you have, first of all. Now this can be, for example, a Windows 10 device, and we have that with our Teams devices, which as we said, Windows 10 or Android. It's then something you are or something you know, and that is like a biometric or a PIN, or that with the latest iPhones and Android devices and mobile phones, it's your face really, isn't it? You can do face recognition. And what that integrates with is the Microsoft Authenticator app, and that all combined is what gives you the password authentication, passwordless authentication. So if just moving across to the next slide with this password, this is a diagram which essentially shows the steps that are taken in that process of the passwordless authentication. So the first step is the user enters their username. So that'll be, their first, it might be first name dot last name at your domain name. And then step 2, Azure AD detects that user has a strong credential, and it starts the strong credential flow. And then we move on to, well, as you can see, you've got Azure AD there in the cloud, and then it moves across to the square box. You can see APNS and FCM, and that's step 3. So what's happened there is a notification is then sent to the authentication app that we have on our mobile device via the Apple push notification service, which is that APNS. So that's for iOS devices, or via the fiber-based cloud messaging, which is the FCM, which is for Android devices, essentially. So we move down to step 4, which you can see down there where the user is. So the user receives that push notification and opens the app. You get a little notification on that. I normally get one on my iPhone, and I press the button and that opens the app for me automatically. Step 5 the app calls Azure AD and receives that proof of presence challenge. So then that's kind of the device talking back to Azure AD. Step 6, the user completes that challenge by entering their biometric or their PIN, or in my phone's case, my face, to unlock that private key. That's then signed with the private key and sent back to Azure AD in step 7, which we can see just under the cloud there. Finally, in step 8, Azure AD performs that public/private key validation and returns a token, and that's then the passwordless authentication complete. So yeah, I love working with diagrams. I just thought it'd be easier to explain the flow of it.
Yeah, and anyone that's got MFA enabled, so Azure Premium Plan 1, is it, or Azure Plan 1, Plan 2?
Azure
yeah,
AD
so as long as you're
P1,
licensed for that, you've got this right. You know, your admins can turn it on, and it is, you'll see how simple it is in the demonstration. It just gives you, you know, you put in your details, you put in your email address, your username, hit go, it logs in, and it gives you a choice of numbers. You know, it displays a number on the screen on the device,
exactly.
and then the choice of numbers appear on your phone, and you just pick the right one. Obviously, after you've done, like you said, you know, the whole face thing, or the biometrics, or the little squiggly pattern, or pin number, whichever input that you choose, it is really good. You know, it's been. I mean, when you've got organisations that have got passwords that are, you know, 12 characters long, or you're sat there going duh, 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 duh on the screen, you don't want that, do you? But there you go.
Shall we move into show them the demo?
Yeah, okay. So we've looked at Azure AD groups, we've looked at Azure AD, and we've found an authentication method that we like. How are we maintaining these devices in Endpoint Manager? So there is a couple of methods of doing so. There's a couple of things, and again, I'm only going to show you sort of like the key sort of areas. I'm not going to go into too much detail on creating of the contents of said policies, but some of the things that to consider when deploying these are, you know, definitely configuration policies, updates, and being aware of the updates of those devices. And the Teams Admin Center. So I'll show you some of the stuff in the Teams Admin Center as well as Endpoint Manager. For Android devices, again, there's a lot more in the Teams Admin Center for Android devices at the moment, which is good. But also look at conditional access and compliance policy. So conditional access specifically more around the Android version, and how you could secure that kind of stuff going forward. So configuration profiles, what are they? So configuration profiles are exactly what they are. They manage settings and features for different Teams devices, or any devices for that fact in the organization, including collaboration bars, Teams displays, Teams phones, collaboration bars, Teams panels. Okay, you can create and upload a configuration profile on that as well, and you can assign profiles to devices. Microsoft Teams rooms and Windows updates. So Windows device patching. So there is a list of versions of the OS which are certified to use with Microsoft Teams app that sits on the actual device itself, and that's available on Microsoft. The versions of OS, I think the current one is 20H2. There is a certified Teams app version with that. There is some logic built into the Microsoft Teams Rooms devices, and when they're provisioned, and there's a nice long PowerShell script to do so. When you rebuild them, Okay, they do get sort of delivered automatically. At around 2 o'clock each morning, it does check for updates. Do not force the resource policies on them. Don't try and update them manually, because it can break the Teams app in an unsupported sort of fashion. So you don't need to manually do them. You could control them if you wanted to. You could try and do it that way with WSUS if you wanted to, but just be very careful on how you would do it. And I know you're looking at me weird here, because you're probably going to say something about update rings, aren't you?
I was going to ask about them exactly. Yeah, is it not a good way to use Windows Updates rings and the Windows Update for Business?
Yes, but again, you don't need to, because these devices can update themselves to the latest version as and when.
Right.
But it's if you really want to sort of go into granular sort of control. Again, do you really need to if the device is going to update itself? Mainly sort of things like Windows Defender for Endpoint as well. It will update itself. You don't run the sort of the upgrade advisor or anything like that to them. It just has that nice little bit of logic. It kind of knows if it's got that version on there, not to update to that. So it's kind of clever in that respect.
The only reason why I would say to manage it is I'm a big believer, like, pilot devices. So say that you've got a number of Teams devices, deploying it to a small group of maybe 1 or 2 pilot devices first to see, because again, I don't know how they are in Teams, but I know generally Windows 10 updates, they can potentially break a device.
So again, you can defer them. Using the standard channels within the update rings within Endpoint Manager, you could defer them that way and create that sort of that ring, that inner sort of ring being your pilot, and then your wider range as you spread out. But but that comes down to your company policy and how you want to do it.
Yeah, you're obviously talking from your own experience with these devices. Like I said, they're a lot more intuitive, and whereas with a standard Windows 10 laptop, there is probably a need to manage it. With the team devices, it's probably not as, with your Teams room devices, it's probably not as much need because they're so intuitive.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, it is effectively a Windows 10 machine with nothing else installed apart from this Teams app, on there.
Mm-hmm.
So, there is not much, touch wood, that could go wrong unless the boot sector, the boot image got corrupted.
Okay, it's interesting.
So with Android sort of devices, it's kind of important that you have that compliance policy in place, so you haven't got sort of uncontrolled sort of Android devices in there, especially around device health, to meet certain requirements, device properties, so the maximum and minimum OS levels, and any encryption that should be set, on the device as well, to mark them as compliant. If they're not compliant, the device just simply stop working, right? We don't want it to have any rogue devices going on our network.
Of course not, 100%.
So, of course, Endpoint Manager isn't the only place where you can manage these devices. There are some other places that you can manage sort of Teams-enabled features, and that is within the Teams Admin Center. So as we've already mentioned, if you've got the Teams Device Administrator role or Teams Service Administrator role or Global Admin, you kind of have the rights to do this. And the Teams Admin Center does a good job, actually. So now you can update firmware and device firmware from the Teams Admin Center. And one of the things that I'm going to do is we're going to show you a little demonstration of my demo environments Teams Admin Center. Okay. So the Teams Admin Center itself, under devices, you've got numerous different bits there. You've got IP phones, Teams rooms, collaboration bars, like I said earlier. That should be, sort of Microsoft Teams and Android. Hopefully they change it. Teams displays, so Teams certified screens, and Teams panels, which are obviously the ones that go on the outside door, and IP phones, so desk phones, conference phones. So Poly do a spider phone called the C60, or you've got the Poly CCX, which are the handheld, up to the ear sort of, things that you like to see bosses slam down on desks when they don't get their own way, sort of thing. There is hopefully, touch wood, going to be something else appearing in this left-hand side over the next few months. So for the Surface Hub, because obviously that's now changing from an app on there to the Microsoft Teams room on Surface Hub. So you can see Microsoft Teams rooms on Windows, Microsoft Teams room on Android, Microsoft Teams room on Surface Hub. So you can see where they're kind of going there, and hopefully that will appear in there.
Yeah.
But if we look at the phones, for example, live demo. There we go. So there are two devices there. In there, it's a conference room, and this is a CCX. Now, depending on how you configure them, okay, you can set them as common area phones, depending on what license you apply. So you don't have to have a Teams device license if they're a common area phone. You can just have a common area phone license from the Teams Admin Center. Or conference phone. I haven't got the policy set for the Spider phone. That's a Teams PowerShell policy, which I'm not going to get into today, but you can assign the policy and call it a conference phone, and it gives you a different set of options. Like, for example, if you didn't want people to browse the GAL, for example, in a meeting room, you could just take that away, and it can't be done in there. If I look at the phones themselves, I can see there. So I've got the phone device. I've got the health status. It says not urgent. That's because I know there's an update pending. The manufacturer, the manufacturer, the model, IP address, and any sort of history that you can view. So I'm just going to click on this. Now this has been turned off for some time. It was turned on today. So here we go. So under health, you can see there, so service logs. Oh, it's telling me that it is all up to date. Oh, that's weird. Why is it telling me non-urgent? But yeah, so you can see there what versions of the app on there, the firmware, and that's kind of your manufacturers or the Android sort of firmware and the OS as well in there. And the details, MAC address, which is good. And when you start looking at device provisioning, which I'm going to cover in another sort of video post, hopefully in the next few weeks, where you can, if you buy these devices on bulk, you just enter the MAC address and you assign it, and it's just easier. It works, and a user just goes, gets a code, and puts it in, and away it goes. Great. Again, that's an Android feature. So we can see there. Here we go. So under the history, when it's done some software updates over time for that particular one device. It is telling me there is a software update available. Let's have a look. No, maybe not. Not particularly.
Probably the admin center is just not updated.
Maybe. So this has been off for some time, this device. Let's have a look at the other device, for example. So the mobile phone, the actual phone. Yeah, that's showing us up to date. I'm not quite sure why that's showing us non-urgent. Again, could be just because it's been off for some period of time. Again, you can also see the status and any recent activity as well on there. Now, as a device administrator, I can download device logs, I can update software, I can click restart, I can refresh details. That'll go away and pull the device and get the information from the actual device itself. Again, so that's kind of the Android-based stuff. Under Teams rooms, this is more sort of Windows-based ones. I haven't got them any turned on at the moment. Again, you can click in that, you can go in there. And if, for example, they are Teams supported peripherals, and there's a whole portfolio of Teams supported devices, if you go to aka.ms/Teams devices, it takes you to a whole page of Microsoft Teams certified devices. And this particular device is a Poly G85T, which is a Polycom Poly device. Basically, it's a little tiny Lenovo PC with a little touchscreen device, and this is a Director 2 camera, so it's got 2 cameras on there. It does really good tracking and focusing. You can see there that all these devices have been or were connected at the time this device went offline. It's been offline because it's been boxed up, but it's moved to our new space on the ground floor, on the first floor. So at the time, that was all connected and healthy. There you go. Network was connected on that day, so you can see quite a few. These are the accounts sign in, so the account is signed in fine. So you can view some good information in here to help with your troubleshooting.
A lot of granular information there. I'm quite surprised actually. I'm honest with you.
Yeah, when it's online and there's stuff there to look at, you can really sort of see some of the stuff that's in there, especially on activity and history.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Collaboration bars. So I've got a Polycom X50 and an X30. The X30 currently isn't licensed or used. The X50 again, that's an Android-based device. So it has a touchscreen console. Oh, there you go. Updates available. So this one's telling me there's an update available. So if I click on this and I go to firmware updates, manual updates, there we go. So it's telling me the current version. Okay, so this is what's happening. This is what happens if you beat the if you get impatient. So I got impatient and downloaded the latest firmware direct from Poly. Teams hasn't quite caught up to the fact that it's got a more recent version than what Teams is publishing. So version mismatch, so therefore it thinks there's an update available. But that's just me being impatient, because on the devices you can decide where to download the update from. I've got it straight from Poly before Microsoft have got it in the Teams admin center. But you can schedule. So for example, if I want to schedule that, I can select a date and it will go ahead and do that. So if you had a bulk set of meeting rooms that you wanted to do on a set time, you can go ahead and do that. I don't have any Teams displays or Teams panels to show you, but one thing I do particularly want to show is the configuration profile. And so this is a configuration profile that I'd set, very basic, especially around Android devices. There's some settings in there that I wanted to set. Maybe I should have changed that, the default password for the devices. But you can set the information, and you can create one for each device if you really wanted to, or if you want to apply the same one to multiple devices, then by all means that is possible. And you can set some basic configuration here for that, rather than do this in the Endpoint Manager. You can do that in here as well. So that is basically the Teams Admin Center sort of side of things in a nutshell. I don't think there's anything in there left to show you apart from the provision devices, which I'll cover in a later video. But yeah, I think other than that, that is Microsoft Teams Rooms devices integrated into Endpoint Manager and Azure AD.
Excellent. That's been great. So I've personally learned quite a bit about the integration, especially the admin center. So obviously this whole video has been for the Azure Back to School 2021 initiative, which is running all of September. So it starts September the 1st. This video is going to be on September the 2nd. So please check it out. If you're on social media, do use the hashtag of #Azure Back to School. And quickly just want to give a big thank you and shout out to Dwayne Natwick for, again, running the initiative and organising it. So I know it's been a pleasure. It's his first collaboration with you, Sam. It's been good fun.
It's been fun.
Hopefully one of many more to come.
Absolutely.
So excellent. So yeah, from me personally, thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you very much. Cheers.